It was late afternoon in Cleveland, the grey sky indicating rain was on its way. The low clouds darkened the streets of Bridgeport neighborhood, already quiet at that hour. Rebecca Oliver, a woman in her early 30s, had just closed the doors of her small bicycle repair shop when she noticed a figure standing near the sidewalk. A little girl, alone, soaked to the bone, was hesitantly watching the entrance to the shop. The bicycle accompanying her had a crooked handlebar, a fallen chain, and a bent front wheel. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. She wore a mud-stained pink jacket, the sleeves too long, hiding her fingers. Her backpack hung from her shoulder with a broken clasp, dragging on the ground, soaked through. Rebecca approached, surprised. The girl was visibly nervous, trembling, not just from cold, but from insecurity. With a gentle gesture, the woman led her into the shop, turned on the yellowish light that flickered on the ceiling, and asked the girl to sit on a wooden bench worn by time. "You're soaked, little one. You'll catch a cold like this," said Rebecca, with a softness in her voice she rarely used. She had worked alone for years, maintaining the shop inherited from her father, who had once been a street mechanic and an impromptu teacher for the neighborhood boys. Rebecca found a clean towel she kept for emergencies and offered it to the girl. She put water to heat in an old kettle she kept in a corner of the shop, on a small burner. "Tea will warm you up," she commented, while examining the damaged bicycle. "Your bike's had a rough day, I see." The girl remained silent, her attentive eyes following Rebecca's every movement. Her fear seemed old, domesticated, like someone who already knew that asking for help could be dangerous. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," continued Rebecca, understanding the silence. "I'm not much for conversation either. My dad used to say that tools speak for us." While adjusting the handlebar and lubricating the chain, Rebecca spoke little, but naturally. She explained what she was doing with the bicycle as if it were a routine conversation. "See this chain? It came off, but it's not broken. Sometimes we think something is lost, but it just needs to get back on the right track." The shop was small but welcoming in its own way. It smelled of oil, rubber, and metal. The walls were decorated with old cycling posters and black and white photographs. One of them showed a middle-aged man smiling, holding a wrench next to a group of teenagers in front of the same shop. "That's my dad," Rebecca commented, noticing the girl's interest in the photo. "He built this place with his own hands. He taught the neighborhood boys how to fix their bikes. He used to say that once you learn to fix something, you never feel helpless in the face of a problem again." The kettle whistled, and Rebecca prepared a cup of fennel tea, sweetening it with honey. She handed the steaming mug to the girl, who accepted it with a shy nod. Gradually, as she worked on the bicycle, Rebecca noticed the girl relaxing, her tense shoulders lowered. Her hands stopped trembling, and her eyes gained a spark of curiosity. "Do you like bicycles?" Rebecca asked. The girl nodded. "It's my best friend," she answered in a low voice, surprising Rebecca with the unexpected response. "Bicycles do make good friends," Rebecca agreed. "They take us where we want to go, give us freedom, and only ask for a little care in return." "My dad gave me this one for my birthday," revealed the girl, a bit more confident. "But he doesn't have time to teach me how to take care of it." Rebecca nodded without pressing for more information. She continued her work, fixing the bent wheel with patience and precision. The rain finally fell outside, drumming on the shop's tin roof. The sound created a kind of acoustic cocoon, isolating them from the outside world. It was as if that small space had become a separate universe, where only the ticking of tools and the occasional hiss of the kettle mattered. "There," announced Rebecca after nearly an hour of work. "Your friend is good as new." The bicycle gleamed under the yellowish light. The handlebar was aligned, the chain in place, and the wheel spun without any wobble. Rebecca had even cleaned the frame and lubricated the brakes. "How much do I owe you?" asked the girl, worried, reaching into the pocket of her wet jacket. "Nothing," replied Rebecca. "Consider it a welcome gift to the neighborhood." "But I'm not new here," the girl contested. "Then it's a welcome gift to my shop," Rebecca corrected with a slight smile. The rain had diminished to a fine drizzle when the girl finally prepared to leave. Rebecca lent her an old rain poncho, one of those yellow waterproof ones that she kept for emergencies. "You can return it whenever you want," she said, helping her put on the poncho, which was too large for her size. The girl mounted the bicycle, carefully testing the handlebar and brakes. She seemed like a different person now, more confident, almost happy. "Thank you," she murmured shyly before departing, pedaling slowly down the street. Rebecca stood at the door of the shop, watching until the yellow silhouette disappeared around the corner. She found it curious that the girl hadn't even given her name, but assumed that it would just be a passing encounter. She closed the shop again, this time locking the door. The image of the little girl alone in the rain stayed in her mind as she arranged her tools and turned off the lights. There was something about her that reminded Rebecca of herself as a child, that silent determination, that independence forced by circumstances. On the following Saturday, when Rebecca was organizing some spare parts, she heard a light knock on the shop door. Upon opening it, she found the same girl standing outside. This time it wasn't raining, but the sky remained cloudy, typical of Cleveland's fall. The girl wore a clean blue sweatshirt and jeans. The backpack still had the broken clasp, but was less battered. The expression on her face was less tense, though still cautious. "Hi," she said, almost in a whisper. "My tire went flat." Rebecca looked at the bicycle. The rear tire was visibly deflated. "Well, that happens to the best bicycles," she replied, opening the door wider for the girl to enter. "Let's fix that." And so began an unexpected routine. Every Saturday at the same time, the girl would appear, always alone, always with some problem with her bicycle. Sometimes real, sometimes clearly staged. Rebecca pretended not to notice when the emergency seemed invented. She began to keep a separate stool for her, and over time, allowed the girl to help with light tools. The girl was smart, curious, and enchanted with the universe of the shop. It was only after her third visit that she finally revealed her name. "Lily," she said, while carefully holding a screwdriver, watching Rebecca change a brake cable. "My name is Lily Morgan." "Pleased to meet you officially, Lily Morgan," replied Rebecca with a sincere smile. "I'm Rebecca Oliver." From that moment, something changed. It was as if by revealing her name, Lily had given a small part of herself, entrusting it to Rebecca's care. And the mechanic treasured that name as she did her most precious tools, with respect and responsibility. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. Lily's visits became a fixed point in Rebecca's routine. On Saturdays, the shop gained a different brightness, an energy that went beyond the smell of grease and the sound of tools. Rebecca started buying cookies and juice for when Lily appeared and kept a small notebook where she wrote down basic tips about bicycle maintenance, illustrated with simple hand-drawn sketches. "This is your survival guide for cyclists," she explained, handing the notebook to Lily on a particularly sunny Saturday. "This way you'll know what to do when I'm not around." Lily flipped through the notebook with admiration. The pages contained clear instructions on how to inflate tires, adjust brakes, and lubricate chains. "You draw well," commented the girl, impressed with the detailed illustrations. Rebecca shrugged, but a slight blush of pride colored her cheeks. "My dad taught me. He said a good mechanic needs to know how to use both her hands and her eyes." Over the weeks, Rebecca began to notice details about Lily that went beyond her passion for bicycles. The girl's clothes were of good quality, even when dirty. Her sneakers, though worn, were branded. Her way of speaking revealed a careful education, and sometimes she let slip references to trips and places that ordinary children from the neighborhood would hardly know. On an ordinary Saturday, Lily appeared wearing a gold bracelet, discreet but noticeably expensive. When Rebecca asked about it, the girl smiled. "It was a gift from my dad," she explained, turning the bracelet on her thin wrist. "He gave it to me on the 3rd anniversary of my mom being gone." It was the first time she had mentioned her parents. Rebecca continued adjusting the height of the bicycle seat, giving space for the girl to speak at her own pace. "He's too busy to pick me up or accompany me," continued Lily. "I take advantage of free moments to ride alone and breathe a little." Rebecca nodded, understanding without needing more explanations. Lily's silence said it all. The loneliness of a child who had everything money could buy, except the constant presence of those she loved. "Sometimes the busiest people are the ones who most need to slow down," Rebecca commented softly, "but they don't always realize that." What Rebecca didn't know was that a few meters away, inside a black car always parked on the same corner, a man silently watched his daughter's routine. Edward Morgan was a respected executive, CEO of one of the largest technology startups in the Midwest. At 42, his face carried the weight of multiple responsibilities and daily decisions that affected hundreds of lives. A widower for 3 years, when Sarah, his wife, succumbed to a sudden illness, Edward divided his days between meetings, high-impact decisions, and failed attempts to reconnect with his daughter. Sarah's absence had left a void that he tried to fill with work and more work, emotionally distancing himself to endure the pain. Lily, for her part, withdrew into her own silent world. Conversations between father and daughter became mechanical, limited to practical day-to-day matters. She stopped sharing her thoughts, her dreams, her fears, and Edward, unable to deal with his own vulnerability, didn't know how to break that invisible barrier. When he realized that Lily had begun to go out alone frequently, worry consumed him. Tired of controlling everything and everyone around him, but still unable to let go of control, Edward had discreetly installed cameras in the surroundings and began to follow his daughter from a distance. That's how he discovered the bicycle shop and the woman who had unknowingly become a kind of mentor to Lily. That Saturday afternoon, as he watched through the car window, Edward saw his daughter smiling as she helped the mechanic organize tools. A genuine, spontaneous smile, something he hadn't seen in so long that he had almost forgotten what it looked like. He felt a contradictory mixture of gratitude and jealousy. "Do you need anything else, Mr. Morgan?" asked Paul, his driver and personal security, interrupting his thoughts. "No, Paul. Let's wait a bit longer." Edward had promised himself he wouldn't invade his daughter's freedom, but he couldn't avoid the protective instinct. He observed, recorded, and tried to understand what made that old shop, run by a woman who wore rubber gloves and grease-stained shirts, become his daughter's refuge. Gradually, he began to notice the changes in Lily. She started asking questions at breakfast again, sleeping better, showing interest in various subjects. At home, she occasionally spoke about the shop and Rebecca, with an enthusiasm she hadn't shown in a long time. "Rebecca taught me how to change a tire today," Lily commented during dinner on an ordinary Tuesday. "She says that knowing how to fix things makes us stronger." Edward nodded, feigning casualness, though his heart tightened. It should be him teaching these things to his daughter, not a stranger. Rebecca seems to know a lot about bicycles," he commented, trying to hide his curiosity. "She knows everything," replied Lily with admiration. "Her dad built the shop and she learned from him. Now she takes care of the place alone." The girl paused, playing with the rice on her plate, before adding, "Just like you after Mum left, you also take care of everything alone." The comparison caught Edward off guard. It was the first time in a long time that Lily had mentioned her mother without sadness dominating her face. There was a new understanding in her words, as if she was finally beginning to process grief in a less painful way. "It's different, honey," he replied cautiously. "I have a lot of people to help me. You mainly." Lily shrugged, with that typical gesture of someone who knows more than they say. "Rebecca says that sometimes we need to fix things we didn't even know were broken." That night, after Lily fell asleep, Edward spent hours researching Rebecca Oliver. He discovered that the shop had existed for more than 30 years, founded by Anthony Oliver, a respected mechanic in the neighborhood and known for teaching the trade to young people in the community. Rebecca had taken over the business after her father's death, keeping his legacy alive despite financial difficulties. The shop, once a meeting point for apprentice mechanics, had been losing ground to larger and more modern stores. The online reviews, however, were unanimous in highlighting the quality of the service and the honesty of the owner. An idea began to form in Edward's mind. If he couldn't directly participate in that space that meant so much to Lily, perhaps he could contribute in other ways. Discreet ways to help without interfering, to thank without revealing himself. The following week, Rebecca received an unexpected call. A supplier with whom she had never had credit offered new parts at symbolic values, claiming a special promotion for small entrepreneurs. Days later, an anonymous letter was left at the shop, praising her work with children and suggesting that she open a community course. "Your talent for teaching should not be restricted to the walls of this shop. The neighborhood needs more people like you." The handwriting was refined, careful, written on high-quality paper. Rebecca was intrigued, but soon the demands of daily life made her forget the matter. What she didn't imagine was that those gestures were just the beginning of a series of small interventions orchestrated by Edward. In his mind, he was returning the good that this unknown woman was doing for his daughter. In his heart, perhaps it was an indirect way of approaching a world that Lily had created without him. Meanwhile, the relationship between Rebecca and Lily continued to flourish. The girl no longer invented excuses to visit the shop. She simply appeared, sometimes with the bicycle, sometimes without, just to spend a few hours in that environment that had become her refuge. On a particularly special Saturday, Rebecca presented Lily with a surprise. "I have something for you," she said, handing her a small toolbox. "These are my first tools from when I was about your age. I think they should belong to you now." Lily's eyes shone with emotion when she opened the box and found a set of miniature tools, perfectly preserved. There was a wrench, screwdrivers, pliers, and even a small hammer, all proportional to a child's hands. "They're beautiful," she whispered, caressing each piece with reverence. "Are you sure I can keep them?" "Absolutely," confirmed Rebecca. "Tools are made to be used, not to be kept stored away. My dad gave these to me when he realized I truly loved the craft. Now it's your turn to use them." That afternoon, while helping a customer who unexpectedly appeared, Rebecca observed Lily from the corner of her eye. The girl was sitting on the stool, concentrating on meticulously cleaning each tool from her new collection. There was a sense of belonging on her face, a serenity that contrasted with the frightened child who had appeared in the rain months ago. It was at that moment that Rebecca understood. Without realizing it, she had found much more than an apprentice. She had found a continuation for her father's legacy, a new generation to carry the knowledge and love for bicycles. And perhaps, she thought with a discreet smile, a family she never imagined having. The autumn days in Cleveland began to give way to the more intense cold of winter. The streets of Bridgeport awakened covered by a thin layer of frost, and condensed breath formed small clouds in the air. In Rebecca's shop, an old heater worked tirelessly to keep the environment cozy. Lily had become such a constant presence that Rebecca began to keep an extra coat especially for her. The visits, previously restricted to Saturdays, expanded to some afternoons during the week, when the girl managed to escape the routine of private lessons and extracurricular activities that her father meticulously organized. "My dad hired a piano teacher," Lily commented on a particularly cold afternoon, while helping Rebecca organize a box of new pedals. "He says music helps with cognitive development." Rebecca smiled, noticing how the girl repeated her father's words with precision, although she probably didn't fully understand their meaning. "And do you like piano?" she asked, curious. Lily reflected for a moment before answering. "I like the sound, but I prefer using my hands to fix things." That simple and honest answer made Rebecca smile. There was something special about that child, an authenticity that many adults lost over the years, replaced by social expectations and imposed commitments. "Did you know that music and mechanics have a lot in common?" commented Rebecca, adjusting a brake with precision. "Both require rhythm, precision, and sensitivity, and both can create something beautiful when done with love." Lily's eyes lit up with this new perspective. "I never thought of it that way," she admitted. "Maybe I can like both things." "Of course you can. We don't have to choose between being one thing or another. We can be many things at the same time." This philosophy was something Rebecca applied to her own life. At 34, she was not only a mechanic, but also an amateur artist, a yoga practitioner, and an occasional volunteer in community projects. She had never defined herself by just one characteristic or skill, a lesson she had learned from her father, who always encouraged curiosity and constant learning. Meanwhile, Edward Morgan continued his silent observation. Now, in addition to accompanying Lily from a distance, he had begun to discreetly invest in Rebecca's shop. Through intermediaries and shell companies, he sent modern equipment, specialized catalogs, and even customers who appeared by chance looking for specific services. On a particularly busy day, Rebecca received a visit from an elegant man, a representative of a supposed cycling association. "We're identifying quality shops to include in our official guide," he explained, handing over an impeccably printed business card. "Your name was recommended by several cyclists in the region." Rebecca accepted the card with a mixture of pride and suspicion. She had never been one to believe in happy coincidences. "And what exactly does this nomination mean?" she asked, direct as always. "To start with, a certification that will attract more customers," replied the man with a rehearsed smile, "and also access to a special line of credit for modernizing the space." The proposal was tempting, especially considering the financial difficulties Rebecca faced in keeping the shop running. The rent had increased, taxes weighed more heavily, and competition with large bicycle stores was uneven. "I'll think about it," she replied cautiously. "Thank you for the visit." After the man left, Rebecca carefully examined the card. American Association for Cycling Promotion, a pompous name for an organization she had never heard of. A quick internet search revealed that the association had been recently founded and had headquarters at a commercial address in downtown Cleveland. What Rebecca couldn't know was that the association was just another of Edward's creations to help her indirectly. The executive had set up a complex structure to channel resources without revealing his identity, driven by a mixture of gratitude and curiosity about the woman who had earned his daughter's trust. The weeks passed, and the shop began to attract more attention. Other boys and girls from the neighborhood, intrigued by Lily's constant presence, began to appear with their bicycles. Rebecca, initially hesitant, ended up welcoming those children as her father had done years ago. "Saturday is Apprentice Day," she announced, creating a small informal workshop where she taught basic mechanics. "Whoever comes has to participate, no just watching." It was a way to maintain order and ensure that the space didn't just become a disorganized meeting point. Lily, already familiar with the shop's routine, naturally assumed the role of assistant, proud of her privileged knowledge. "You hold the wrench like this," she explained to a boy of about 10, demonstrating the correct position of the fingers. "Rebecca says the tool has to be an extension of your hand." Rebecca observed that interaction with a mixture of pride and surprise. Lily, so withdrawn when she first arrived, now shared knowledge with confidence and enthusiasm. It was like watching a flower slowly blooming after a long winter. The news about the bicycle classes at the shop spread quickly through the neighborhood. Soon parents began to accompany their children, curious about that spontaneous initiative. Some offered help, others brought snacks to share. What had begun as casual meetings transformed into a small community event. Fiona Murray, a teacher at the local public school, was one of the first adults to take an interest in the project. "What you're doing here is extraordinary, Rebecca," she commented on a Saturday afternoon, while observing a group of children learning to inflate tires. "I'm impressed with their engagement," Rebecca shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I'm not doing anything special, just teaching what my father taught me." "You're giving them much more than technical knowledge," insisted Fiona. "You're teaching responsibility, teamwork, problem-solving, skills that are lacking in formal education." The conversation planted a seed in Rebecca's mind. Maybe those informal meetings could transform into something more structured, something that would really make a difference in those children's lives. It was Lily who gave the final push to the idea, on a rainy Sunday when she unexpectedly appeared at the shop, soaked and breathless. "You shouldn't be riding your bike in this storm," Rebecca reprimanded, drying the girl's hair with a towel. "I know, but I needed to show you this," replied Lily, taking from her backpack a notebook protected by a plastic bag. "I made a project." The project was a set of drawings and notes detailing how the shop could transform into a learning center. There were sketches of workbenches adapted for children, an activity schedule, and even a list of potential sponsors. "My dad always says that good ideas need a business plan," explained Lily seriously. "So I made one for you." Rebecca flipped through the notebook, genuinely impressed with the level of detail and organization. It was evident that Lily had dedicated hours to that project, applying knowledge she had probably absorbed by watching her father work. "This is amazing, Lily," she sincerely praised. "You really thought of everything." "So, are we going to make it happen?" asked the girl, her eyes shining with expectation. Rebecca hesitated. The idea was tempting, but the practical limitations seemed insurmountable. The shop barely had space for regular customers, the budget was tight, and she had no formal qualification to teach. "It's not that simple, little one," she explained gently. "We would need licenses, insurance, adequate equipment. That costs money I don't have." The enthusiasm on Lily's face visibly diminished, and Rebecca felt a pang of guilt for disappointing the girl. "But that doesn't mean we can't continue what we're already doing," she quickly added. The Saturday apprentice days are working well, aren't they? Lily nodded, but it was evident that the bigger idea had captured her imagination. If my dad knew about the project, I'm sure he would help, she commented casually. He has a lot of money and knows important people. The mention of Lily's father left Rebecca curiously uncomfortable. Despite months of living with the girl, she had never met the man who allowed his daughter to spend so much time with a stranger. At times, she wondered what kind of father would do this, neglectful or extraordinarily trusting. "Does your dad know you spend so much time here?" she finally asked, the question escaping before she could contain it. Lily suddenly went quiet, her fingers nervously playing with the gold bracelet on her wrist. "More or less," she replied evasively. "He knows I come to the neighborhood to ride my bike. The housekeeper allows it as long as I return before dinner." That answer didn't reassure Rebecca. On the contrary, it awakened a concern she had been ignoring for weeks. What if she was inadvertently facilitating a potentially dangerous situation? What if Lily's father was looking for her at this very moment, worried about her whereabouts? "I think I need to meet your father, Lily," she said firmly. "If we're going to continue with our lessons, he needs to know exactly where you are and what you're doing." Lily's expression transformed into something close to panic. "No, he'll forbid me from coming. He controls everything in my life, classes, friends, schedules. If he knows about the shop, he'll want to control this too, or worse, he'll prevent me from coming back." The vehemence of the reaction surprised Rebecca. There was genuine fear in the girl's eyes, not the typical fear of a child trying to hide a mischief, but something deeper. "Lily, listen," said Rebecca, kneeling to be at the girl's eye level. "I don't want to cause problems for you, but I also can't continue receiving you here without your father's consent. You understand that, don't you?" Tears began to form in Lily's eyes. "Please don't ruin this," she pleaded. "The shop is the only place where I feel normal, where I can be myself." Those words deeply affected Rebecca. She too knew that feeling, of having a space where she could simply exist without expectations or judgments. The shop had been that place for her throughout her life, especially after her father's departure. "Let's make a deal," she proposed after a moment of reflection. "You'll have 2 weeks to talk to your father about the shop. If you don't want to tell him personally, you can write a letter or ask the housekeeper to explain. But after that deadline, if he doesn't know, I won't be able to receive you here anymore. Is that fair?" Lily wiped away her tears, considering the proposal. "And if he doesn't let me come back? Then we'll respect his decision," Rebecca replied honestly. "But who knows? Maybe he'll surprise you. Sometimes adults surprise us when we give them a chance." What Rebecca didn't know was that very soon, circumstances would force a meeting that none of them was prepared to face, and that the fate of the shop, of Lily, and of herself were about to intertwine in ways she could never have imagined. The Saturday afternoon began like any other at Rebecca's shop. The usual group of children arrived early, eager for the informal mechanics class that had become a tradition. Lily, as always, assumed her role as assistant with seriousness, patiently explaining to a younger boy how to identify a loose spoke in the wheel. "If it makes a metallic sound when you tap it lightly, it means it needs to be tightened," she explained, demonstrating the movement with precision. Rebecca observed the scene with a discreet smile while attending to a customer. In recent weeks, the traffic in the shop had increased considerably. The number of children had grown, and with them came parents, grandparents, and curious neighbors. What had begun as a simple gesture of welcome had transformed into a small, local phenomenon. "You should charge for these classes," commented Mr. Arnold, an old customer who brought his racing bike for regular maintenance. "You have a talent for teaching." Rebecca shook her head. "It's not a service. It's an exchange. They learn mechanics. I learn to have more patience," she joked, although there was truth in her words. The animated chatter of the children created a welcoming atmosphere in the shop. There was something special about seeing that space, which had once been just a solitary workplace, transform into a community meeting point. Rebecca frequently thought about how proud her father would be to see the legacy continuing through her. It was in this relaxed climate that Peter, a boy of about 10 who had been attending the classes for a few weeks, had the idea that would change everything. "What if we fix a bicycle from start to finish without adult help?" he proposed, pointing to an old Schwinn leaning against the back of the shop. "Rebecca could let us do it ourselves to show what we've learned." The suggestion was received with enthusiasm by the other children. The idea of an independent project, a real proof of their newly acquired skills, was irresistible. Lily especially seemed excited about the possibility. "We can divide the tasks," she suggested, naturally assuming the role of leader. "Each one is responsible for a part of the bicycle." Rebecca initially hesitated. The bicycle in question was an old donation that she kept for spare parts. It was in poor condition, with a rusted frame and missing components. On the other hand, it would be an excellent learning project, and the excitement of the children was contagious. "All right," she finally agreed, "but with some conditions. First, I supervise everything from a distance. Second, no one touches anything without the proper safety equipment. And third, if I say stop, you stop immediately. Agreed?" The children promptly agreed, eager to begin. Rebecca separated gloves, safety goggles, and organized the necessary tools on a workbench. She also established a clear perimeter where the work should take place away from the shop's circulation area. "Remember, it's not a race," she warned. "The important thing is to do it right, not fast." The enthusiasm was palpable as the children organized themselves. Lily naturally assumed the role of coordinator, distributing tasks according to each one's abilities. Peter would be responsible for the handlebar and brakes. Anna and Luke would take care of the wheels, while the younger ones would be in charge of cleaning and polishing the frame. Rebecca kept an eye on the group while continuing to attend to customers at the front of the shop. From time to time, she approached to check on the progress, offering tips when necessary, but allowing the children to solve problems on their own whenever possible. The work was progressing well, with only minor setbacks, a tool occasionally falling to the floor, a passing discussion about the best way to remove a rusty pedal. The atmosphere was one of concentration and cooperation, exactly what Rebecca hoped to foster with those classes. It was then that the unexpected happened. While Rebecca was answering a phone call at the front of the shop, a group of older boys from the neighborhood, who frequently observed the classes from a distance, decided to try to fix another bicycle on their own, inspired by what they saw. Without supervision and without the proper equipment, the boys dragged a bicycle to the sidewalk next to the shop and began to randomly dismantle parts using improvised tools. The confusion was evident. Parts scattered on the ground, abrupt movements, and nervous laughter every time something didn't work as expected. It was a matter of minutes until the inevitable occurred. Matthew, a 12-year-old boy who was trying to remove a wheel using an inadequate wrench, slipped when the tool suddenly gave way. The fall was apparently simple, just an imbalance followed by a stumble, but enough for him to scrape his arm on the rough sidewalk and lightly hit his head on a nearby post. The immediate crying attracted everyone's attention. Rebecca ran outside, finding Matthew sitting on the sidewalk, holding his bloody arm while tears streamed down his face. "What happened here?" she asked, kneeling to examine the wound. It wasn't serious, just superficial abrasions, but the scare had been big. "We just wanted to fix it like they're doing in there," explained another boy, pointing to the supervised group in the shop. Rebecca sighed, divided between concern for the injured boy and frustration at not having noticed what was happening just outside. She took Matthew into the shop, cleaned and disinfected the wounds, applying bandages to the deeper scratches. "It's nothing serious," she assured the boy, who had already stopped crying, "but this is exactly why I always say you need supervision and proper equipment." The incident could have ended there, a lesson learned, extra care for the future. However, at that exact moment, Matthew's mother was driving by the street and saw her son being taken into the shop, the arm with blood stains visible even from a distance. What followed was an explosion of maternal concern. Amanda Sanders parked abruptly, ran to the shop, and began questioning in a loud voice what had happened to her son. The scene attracted the attention of other parents passing by, quickly creating a small crowd at the entrance of the shop. "Who let you mess with dangerous tools?" Amanda asked, examining her son's arm with exaggerated horror for the nature of the injury. "Where was the responsible adult?" Rebecca tried to explain the situation calmly. "Matthew wasn't participating in the supervised class," she clarified. "He and his friends decided to imitate what we were doing in here, but on the sidewalk, without my authorization or knowledge." The explanation, however, seemed to fall on deaf ears. The commotion had created a perfect moment for latent anxieties to surface. Other voices joined the chorus of concerns. "My daughter also comes here every week, and they never explained exactly what she does," commented a mother who rarely appeared to pick up her daughter. "Who is this woman anyway? Is she qualified to teach children?" questioned another father, who clearly had never been interested in meeting Rebecca or her work. In minutes, what had been a quiet afternoon of learning transformed into a whirlwind of accusations and questioning. Someone took a picture of Matthew being attended to, and another of the children using tools inside the shop. Before Rebecca could protest, the images were already circulating in local messaging groups, accompanied by alarmist captions. "Shop without adequate supervision," said one of the shared messages. "Woman lets children handle dangerous tools without parental authorization." The children who were participating in the class, including Lily, observed the scene with confused and frightened expressions. The bicycle project was abandoned. Tools quickly returned as parents arrived to pick up their children, some expressing disappointment, others open anger. Fiona, the teacher who had praised Rebecca's work weeks before, tried to intervene, explaining the educational value of those classes and how they were carefully supervised. Her words, however, were lost in the midst of the confusion. At the end of the day, when the crowd finally dispersed, Rebecca closed the doors of the shop with a weight in her heart that she hadn't felt in a long time. The room, previously vibrant with children's voices and the clinking of tools, now seemed strangely empty and silent. Lily was the last to leave, reluctant to leave Rebecca alone in that difficult moment. "It's not fair," said the girl, her voice trembling with indignation. "You didn't do anything wrong." Rebecca forced a smile, trying to reassure the girl. "Sometimes people get scared when they don't understand something," she explained, "and when they're afraid they don't always think clearly. But what now? Will the classes end?" The question hung in the air, heavy as lead. Rebecca didn't have a definitive answer. Part of her wanted to fight for the space she had created, for the good she knew she was doing. Another part, more cautious, questioned if the accusations, the public scrutiny were worth it. "I don't know, Lily," she replied honestly. "I need to think about what to do." The girl was silent for a moment, absorbing the uncertainty in her mentor's voice. Then, with surprising determination for someone so young, she declared, "I'm going to do something. I won't let them destroy this." Before Rebecca could respond, the girl had already left, pedaling quickly down the street. The mechanic stood watching until the small silhouette disappeared around the corner, wondering what that extraordinary child might have in mind. What Rebecca didn't imagine was that Lily, upon arriving home that night, would go straight to her room and, with the determination that only an 8-year-old child can have when they deeply believe in something, would turn on her tablet and start recording a video. "My name is Lily Morgan," she began, looking directly at the camera, "and I want to tell you about the most incredible person I've ever met, and how she's being treated unfairly by people who didn't even care to know her work." The video, recorded with the surprising eloquence of a child accustomed to living with adults, would be the catalyst for a turn of events that no one could predict. In less than 24 hours, the story of the bicycle shop in Bridgeport and its open-hearted mechanic would take a completely unexpected direction. The dawn had not yet yielded when Edward Morgan awoke to the insistent sound of his cell phone. Messages and notifications accumulated on the screen, all mentioning the same subject: Lily. Still drowsy, he opened the first link that a work colleague had sent with the message, "Isn't this your daughter?" Edward's heart almost stopped when he saw Lily looking directly at the camera, sitting on her bed, speaking with a conviction he rarely witnessed in person. "My name is Lily Morgan, and I want to tell you about the most incredible person I've ever met, and how she's being treated unfairly by people who didn't even care to know her work." For almost 5 minutes, his 8-year-old daughter spoke eloquently about Rebecca, describing how the shop had become a place of learning, trust and growth, how she had learned more there in a few months than in years of expensive private lessons, how Rebecca had never treated her like a silly child, but as someone capable of learning and contributing. "She didn't force me to do anything," affirmed Lily, with eyes shining with sincerity. "It was with her that I learned I can do things by myself. She never treated me like a silly child. She listened to me." The last sentence hit Edward like a physical blow. She listened to me. So simple, so devastating. When was the last time he had really listened to his daughter? The video ended with Lily asking people to know the truth about the shop before spreading lies. "Rebecca deserves a chance. We all do." Sitting on the edge of the bed, Edward watched the video 3 times in a row. With each replay, he saw more details: the determination in his daughter's gaze, the maturity in her words, the genuine passion she demonstrated when defending someone she clearly admired. It was a Lily he barely recognized, and who he realized with a tightness in his chest he might never have really known. The notifications continued to arrive. The video had gone viral on local social networks during the night and was now reaching other circles. Journalists from the regional media were already trying to make contact, interested in the story of the little bicycle advocate and her relationship with the Bridgeport mechanic. Edward immediately called Martha, the housekeeper who had been taking care of Lily since Sarah had departed. "How long have you known about this?" he asked, as soon as the woman entered the room, showing the video on the cell phone screen. Martha hesitated, her downcast gaze showing guilt. "Since the beginning, sir," she admitted. "The girl needs space to breathe, to be a child. That shop. She came back from there different, lighter, happier. And you didn't think I should know?" "You're always so busy," replied Martha, with a frankness that only years of service allowed. "And Mrs. Sarah always said that children need secrets, a world of their own. I thought it wouldn't do any harm." Edward ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that revealed his internal conflict. Part of him wanted to be furious about the breach of trust, but another part, perhaps the most sensible, knew that Martha was right. He had become so absorbed in work, so obsessed with ensuring material security after Sarah's departure, that he had forgotten the most important thing, being present. "Is Lily awake yet?" he asked, changing the focus of the conversation. "Not yet, sir. She stayed up late recording that video. She only fell asleep after midnight." Edward nodded, making a decision. "When she wakes up, tell her she won't go to school today. We have important matters to discuss." While waiting for his daughter to wake up, Edward entered executive mode, the one that had earned him respect in the corporate world so many times. He made calls, issued orders, mobilized his public relations team and his contacts in the media. If Lily had taken a courageous stand, he wouldn't be left behind. When he finally knocked on his daughter's bedroom door, it was already past 9 in the morning. He found her sitting on the bed, hugging her pillow, clearly apprehensive. "You saw the video," she stated. Not a question, but an affirmation. "I did," confirmed Edward, sitting on the edge of the bed. 3 times, actually. Lily expected reprimand, punishment, prohibitions. Instead, Edward did something he hadn't done in a long time. He opened his arms. After a moment of hesitation, she accepted the hug, burying her face in her father's shoulder. "I'm proud of you," he said, surprising them both with the sincerity in his voice. "What you did was brave." Lily pulled back a little, looking at him with suspicion. "You're not angry, because I was going to the shop in secret. I'm disappointed that you didn't feel you could tell me," he replied honestly. "But I think the fault is more mine than yours." That morning marked the beginning of a conversation that should have happened years ago. Sitting on Lily's bed among stuffed animals and children's books, father and daughter talked about the shop, about Rebecca, about Sarah, about grief and loneliness. Edward listened, really listened, as Lily described how she sometimes felt invisible, how the shop had become her refuge, how Rebecca made her feel capable and important. "She reminds me of Mom sometimes," Lily confessed at one point, "not by her manner, but by the way she looks at me, as if she really sees me." That comparison made Edward swallow hard. Sarah had always had the gift of seeing through people, of perceiving hidden potentials and fears. It was one of the qualities that had attracted him from the beginning, that capacity to make him feel truly understood. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Rebecca was facing her own storm. Upon arriving at the shop that morning, she found a small group of people at the door. Some local journalists, curious parents, and even a representative from the neighborhood association. "Is it true that you're being persecuted for teaching mechanics to children?" asked a reporter as soon as Rebecca got off her motorcycle. Confused, she tried to understand what was happening. That's when someone showed her Lily's video, which had already accumulated thousands of views and shares. "My God," she murmured, watching the girl's passionate defense. "She shouldn't have done that." But the damage, or would it be the miracle, was already done. The video had touched people in a way that no formal explanation could. Lily's disarming sincerity, speaking about how she felt respected and valued at the shop, strongly contrasted with the accusations of negligence that had circulated the day before. Rebecca tried to handle the situation as best she could, answering questions calmly and transparently. Yes, she taught basic mechanics to children. No, She never allowed them to use dangerous tools without supervision. Yes, there were safety precautions. No, she didn't charge anything for the classes. By noon, when she finally managed to enter the shop and close the door, she was exhausted. She had never been a person for spotlights or public attention. She preferred the anonymity of her workbench, the silent dialogue with tools and parts. It was then that her phone rang. An unknown number. "Anthony's shop, Rebecca speaking," she answered automatically. "Miss Oliver, this is Edward Morgan, Lily's father." Rebecca's heart accelerated. Finally, after months, the mysterious figure who allowed Lily to frequent the shop had a name and a voice. "Mr. Morgan," she replied, trying to maintain her composure. "I imagine you've seen the video." "Yes, and I'd like to speak with you personally, if possible. I'm on my way to your shop right now. Could you receive me?" Before Rebecca could fully process the request, the shop's doorbell rang. Upon opening the door, she found a tall man in an impeccable suit, intense eyes that she immediately recognized. They were the same as Lily's. At his side, the girl herself held his hand, a mixture of nervousness and hope on her face. "Rebecca," said Edward, extending his hand, "it's a pleasure to finally meet you. We have a lot to talk about." Lily's expression, oscillating between apprehension and expectation, said it all. That meeting would change their lives forever. In the following hours, sitting among dismantled bicycles and organized tools, Edward, Rebecca, and Lily talked with a rare honesty. Edward explained his discreet surveillance, his indirect attempts to help the shop, his fear of losing the connection with his daughter. Rebecca shared her concerns, her hesitation to get too involved in Lily's life, her commitment to her father's legacy. And Lily, sitting between the two adults, observed with growing relief as the two worlds she loved finally met. "I have a proposal for you," Edward eventually said, looking directly at Rebecca, "one that I believe could benefit not only Lily, but many other children in this neighborhood." The following Monday, Cleveland woke up to unexpected news. The main newspapers and news portals in the city headlined the same subject. "Businessman announces creation of community training center in Bridgeport." The official communication, issued on behalf of Edward Morgan, CEO of Nexus Technologies, revealed that he was the father of Lily, the girl from the viral video, and that he had closely, albeit discreetly, followed everything that had happened at the bicycle shop. In the text, he recognized the human value of Rebecca's work and announced the creation of a free community center for practical training for young people, headquartered in the neighborhood and with direct support from his company. "I believe that education goes beyond traditional classrooms," the statement said. "The work initiated by Rebecca Oliver, continuing her father's legacy, deserves not only recognition, but expansion. Our goal is to create a space where children and young people can learn practical skills, develop self-confidence, and discover vocations, regardless of their socioeconomic condition." The announcement also mentioned that Rebecca would be the main coordinator of the project, maintaining the essence of the work she already carried out, but now with adequate resources and structure. The news surprised the entire city, especially the residents of Bridgeport. Those who days before had questioned the safety of the shop now enthusiastically commented on the opportunity that was emerging for the neighborhood. The speed with which opinions changed did not go unnoticed by Rebecca. "People are funny," she commented to Edward, as they examined together the blueprint of what would be the new center. "Yesterday I was irresponsible, putting children in danger. Today I'm an educational visionary." Edward smiled, understanding the irony. "The corporate world isn't much different," he replied. "One day you're crazy for investing in a risky idea. The next you're a visionary genius because it worked out." That shared observation established common ground between them, a mutual understanding about human contradictions, about how public perception could be volatile and often superficial. The following weeks were of intense planning. The community center project took shape with surprising speed, driven by Edward's resources and Rebecca's practical experience. The old shop would be completely renovated and expanded, incorporating the neighboring property that had been abandoned for years. Lily followed each step with contagious enthusiasm. Her eyes shone as she examined the blueprints, suggested ideas, and imagined possibilities. It was as if all her contained energy finally found a productive channel of expression. "Can we have a space just for girls too?" she suggested during a planning meeting. Some of my friends are embarrassed to learn mechanics because they think it's a boy thing. Edward and Rebecca exchanged surprised and impressed looks at the sensitivity of the observation. That's an excellent idea, agreed Rebecca. When I started working with my dad, many people thought it strange for a woman to be in the shop. Having a space where girls feel comfortable to start can make all the difference. That's how the Inventor's Corner was born, an area of the center dedicated specifically to projects developed by girls. It wouldn't be exclusive, boys could participate, but it would be coordinated and led by women, creating positive references. The news about the community center spread quickly, attracting attention and support from various sectors. Local companies offered materials for the renovation, qualified professionals volunteered to teach specific workshops, and even the City Hall expressed interest in establishing an official partnership. What was most surprising, however, was the silent transformation occurring among the three protagonists of that story. Edward, previously immersed in work and emotionally distant, began to reserve entire afternoons to follow the development of the project with Lily. It wasn't uncommon to see him with rolled-up sleeves, learning from Rebecca how to change a tire or adjust a brake, while Lily watched with a mixture of amusement and pride. "You have executive hands," Rebecca teased when he struggled with a particularly difficult tool. "You need to create calluses if you want to be a decent mechanic." Instead of being offended, Edward laughed, accepting the challenge with surprising humility for someone accustomed to leading and giving orders. There was something in Rebecca's authenticity that disarmed him. Her direct honesty, her passion for what she did, her refusal to impress or pretend to be something she wasn't. For Rebecca, living with Edward also represented learning. Accustomed to solving everything alone, she found herself needing to delegate, collaborate, accept help. His organizational skills and strategic vision complemented her practical knowledge and connection with the community. "You didn't have to do all this," she commented one afternoon as they watched the structure of the new roof being installed. "You could have simply taken Lily out of the shop, or at most made an anonymous donation." Edward contemplated the implicit question for a moment before answering. "When Sarah left, something in me closed. I began to live on autopilot, work, provide, protect. I forgot what it was like to participate, feel, create." He paused, observing Lily, who was helping some volunteers paint a wall. That video she recorded, it was like a slap in the face. Her courage, her passion. "I realized that while I was trying to control her from a distance, you were teaching her to fly." That confession, made without any artifice, deeply touched Rebecca. For the first time, she saw Edward not just as Lily's father or the successful businessman, but as a man trying to find his way back to what really mattered. 2 months after the initial announcement, the Anthony Oliver Community Center, named in honor of Rebecca's father, was ready for its official inauguration. The space, unrecognizable after the renovation, maintained the welcoming charm of the old shop, but expanded and modernized. In addition to the bicycle mechanics area, there were now spaces for basic carpentry, electronics, sewing, urban gardening, and even a small maker lab with 3D printers and robotics equipment. On the opening day, the entire neighborhood seemed to have attended. Children ran excitedly from one station to another, experimenting with tools and materials under the supervision of trained monitors. Parents chatted in small groups, admiring the facilities and commenting on the possibilities that were opening up for their children. At the center of it all, Lily walked proudly, presenting each space as if she were the official hostess. She was no longer the shy and hesitant girl who had appeared in the rain months ago. She had grown not only in stature, but in confidence and purpose. "She's the one who brought us together," commented Rebecca, observing Lily from a distance as she explained the functioning of a tool to a group of younger children. Edward, standing beside her, nodded. "She has a lot of her mother in her." Sarah could always see connections where others saw only separation. A silent understanding passed between them, the recognition that, through Lily, something new was being born, not just a community center, but possibilities that neither of them had imagined months ago. At the end of the day, when most visitors had already left, Rebecca found Lily sitting on a stool in the corner of the shop, the same stool she had reserved for her since her first visits. The girl contemplated the transformed space with a serene expression. "What are you thinking about, little one?" asked Rebecca, sitting beside her. Lily took a moment before answering. "I'm thinking about how it all started with a crooked wheel," she said finally. "If my bicycle hadn't broken on that rainy day, none of this would have happened." Rebecca smiled, touched by the perceptive observation. Life is like that sometimes. The best stories begin with something broken that needs to be fixed. Edward approached silently, listening to the conversation. "Like me," commented Lily with the disarming frankness of children. "I was also a bit broken when I arrived here." "We all were, in a way," added Edward, joining them. "Sometimes we need someone to help us find the right parts to start over." The three remained silent for a moment, united by an understanding that went beyond words. The Anthony Oliver Community Centre was more than an educational project. It was a symbol of how unexpected connections could rebuild fragmented lives, of how the act of teaching and learning could heal invisible wounds. In the months and years that followed, the centre became a model of success, replicated in other neighbourhoods and even in other cities. Rebecca and Edward, initially united only by Lily's well-being, discovered a partnership that transcended the professional. Between adjusting handlebars and expansion plans, they found in each other something that both had forgotten they needed: understanding, mutual respect, and eventually, love. Lily flourished in that environment of support and possibilities. As she grew, her passion for mechanics evolved into a broader interest in engineering and design. The tools she had received from Rebecca in childhood always remained nearby, not just as work instruments, but as a tangible reminder that fixing broken things, be they bicycles or hearts, was one of the most valuable skills one could learn. And all this because on a rainy afternoon in Cleveland, a woman opened the door of her shop to a little girl with a broken bicycle, a crooked wheel, a misaligned handlebar, and the beginning of a journey that none of them could have predicted.